This heroic Revolutionary War Patriot earned a promotion from one of the most famous people in American history. Later, he got caught up in the last Native American attack in the state of Pennsylvania and soon died due to a 4th of July celebration. You may be asking, how do you die from a 4th of July celebration? In this video, I'll tell you his story and how this brave patriot met his unique and tragic end. Hey everybody, this is Colonel Carson with Family Tree Nuts, and while building a family tree for a client, I found this wild story about her 5th great-grandfather, Captain Andrew Sharp. The more that I discovered about him, the more that I knew that I wanted to share his story with all of you. At Family Tree Nuts, we build family trees for clients that either don't know how, don't have the time, or don't want to pay for those expensive membership fees. We also make history videos all over the United States and a few countries, so if you like videos like these, be sure to subscribe to our channel and give us a thumbs up if you like this video. Like many of our ancestors, the exact facts of his beginnings are a little unclear. It has been stated that he was born between 1750 and 1755 in Northern Ireland, but some reports state that he was born in Cumberland County, Pennsylvania, to Scottish immigrants Thomas Sharp and Margaret Elder. Now during this time, Cumberland County was in the backcountry, and he would have lived among Scots-Irish and German families on America's first frontier. Andrew spent his mid-20s fighting as a patriot in the Revolutionary War, and he served 3 separate enlistments. He first enlisted in March of 1776 as a private in Captain William Pebble's company and Colonel Samuel Miles's Pennsylvania Rifles. He fought with his unit under General George Washington during the battles of Long Island, Princeton, and Germantown. His second enlistment was from 1 March to 1 May 1777 with the Pennsylvania State Regiment of Foot. His third enlistment started on an unknown date, and he was mustered out of service on 13 November 1783. During this enlistment, he fought at the Battle of Trenton Ferry, where after the battle, he was cited for heroism. Family lore states that before the Battle of Brandywine, his reputation for bravery caused him to be given a promotion to the rank of captain by General George Washington. Now, let me interject here for a second. How cool is it to have an ancestor that was such a hero in the American Revolution that he was given a promotion from George Washington himself? His DAR number is number 221638. After the war, Captain Sharp returned to Cumberland County, where in 1783 he married Ann Woods. They had 7 children. Like most of our ancestors, they moved further west and lived in what is now known as Indiana County, Pennsylvania. This brings us to 1794. The Sharps decided to be one of the thousands of families to migrate to Kentucky. Friends had went ahead of them and sent word about the golden opportunities that awaited them there, especially since there hadn't been any Indian attacks for a few years. Now what happened next, we are blessed to know from a letter written by Captain Sharp's daughter, Hannah Sharp Leeson, who was 10 years old when her family decided to go on the adventure. She wrote this letter to her grandnephew, William Moorhead, in 1875, when she was about 91 years old. It was early summer when Captain Sharp, along with his family and 3 families of their neighbors, totaling 20 in all, began their adventure. Just before they reached the Allegheny River, the party banked their boat and the 4 men began to set up camp. Now earlier that day, a band of 12 Native Americans had went to Pittsburgh to trade. The people would not trade with them, which threw them into a rage. They shot and killed 2 men in canoes before coming upon Captain Sharp's party. As the men were starting to set up camp, the natives opened fire on them. 2 of the men scattered into the trees, and Sharp and his friend frantically pushed the boat back adrift into the river. Sharp's friend was shot dead, and Sharp was severely wounded, but once the boat was adrift, he climbed back onto it to defend the women and children. Luckily, there were 4 rifles on the boat, and with the women reloading the rifles, he was able to fire back at the attackers almost continuously. The boat got caught in a whirlpool, and each time the boat got close to the attackers, they opened fire. Eventually, the boat broke loose, and the natives followed them along the river for 12 miles, shouting all the way for them to give themselves up. A Mrs. Connor and her son wanted to give themselves up because the men were either dead or wounded. Captain Sharp told them to back down or he would shoot them himself. At that moment, Mrs. Connor's son was shot dead from one of the attackers. Eventually, the natives disappeared into the woods. Once again, Captain Sharp's bravery had saved the ones he loved. This attack became known as the last Native American attack in the state of Pennsylvania. The next morning, the party arrived at Fort Pitt, where they reported the attack and regrouped. Sadly, in addition to the man who was killed trying to assist getting the boat back afloat, 2 of the neighbor children had also been killed. Most were amazed that Captain Sharp was still alive because he had been shot in 4 different places. He had one of his eyebrows shot off and was shot once in each side of his abdomen and once in his back. He was taken to doctors in Pittsburgh to recuperate from his wounds. He was treated and was on the mend, making progress every day. Now, Captain Sharp knew that the family was not going to be able to continue the journey to Kentucky, so he sold the boat and made arrangements to buy back their family home in Cumberland County. His family became optimistic that he would make a full recovery, but they had no way to prepare for what happened next. 36 days after the attack was the morning of 4 July, 1794, America's 18th Independence Day. The day began with the patriotic citizens of Pittsburgh firing off a barrage of cannons to get the celebration started. This blast startled Captain Sharp, and he leapt from his bed, and while doing so, ripped open one of his main wounds. The doctors were not able to stop his flow of blood, and sadly, 4 days later, he passed away. His youngest child was only 11 days old. Captain Sharp was the last person in Pennsylvania to be killed by Indians. It was raining during his funeral that was held at First Presbyterian Church, which at the time was made of logs. Captain Sharp's favorite scripture, the 124th Psalm, was read. He was buried in the church cemetery with honors of war. When the present-day church was built, his bones were among the many that were unidentified and were placed in a crypt under the northwest corner of the church. Wow! Now we know the epic and tragic story of Captain Andrew Sharp. What are your thoughts? Were you shocked by this story? How would it affect you if you discovered a story like this about one of your ancestors? I'd love to hear what you had to say in the comments below. And I wonder what stories like this could be hiding in your family tree. When we discover stories about our ancestors, especially like this one, history becomes tremendously more real. The events and locations that we read about or drive by begin to have a different impact on us, and we are bestowed with a deeper, enlightened understanding. Discovering and preserving stories like this is a passion of ours, and we are proud to discover this one, share it with their descendants, and all of you. And remember, family tree nuts, let our nuts find the nuts in your family tree.